we need to, I can pray for us if we start, so. Okay. Dear Heavenly Father, thank you so much, for this evening we have to be together, just together as friends and to discuss your word together, to think about what is being said here in Ezra 1, to think about, the history behind this and what you were doing with your people during this time. Lord, I just pray you'll bless the study, help Eli to have the words to say, and may this conversation just all be glorifying to you. So thank you, Father, for all you've done. It's in your Son's precious name we pray all this today. Amen.
All right, so today we're doing Ezra chapter 1. We have 11 verses and 5 people. So I can read the 3, everyone else can read 2.
Of course you take the 3.
Well, Dustin can have the 3.
Oh, you're gonna make me read the 3.
Oh my goodness.
No, I'm just kidding, that's fine.
Either way works. So
No, you can do the 3, yeah.
well, Hannah will get to start us off in verses 1.
Okay. In the first year of Cyrus, king of Persia, and that the word of the Lord at the mouth of Jeremiah might be fulfilled, the Lord stirred up the spirit of Cyrus, king of Persia, so that he made a proclamation throughout all of his kingdom, and also put it in writing. Thus says Cyrus, king of Persia, the Lord of God of heaven has given me all the kingdoms of the earth, and has charged me to build him a house in Jerusalem, which is in Judea.
May God be with all of you who are his people. You are free to go to Jerusalem in Judah and build the temple of the Lord, the God of Israel, who is in Jerusalem. Those who stay behind wherever they live should support those who want to go. Give them silver and gold, supplies and cattle, and special gifts for the temple of God in Jerusalem.
Then rose up the heads of the fathers' houses of Judah and Benjamin, and the priests and the Levites, everyone whose spirit God had stirred to go up to rebuild the house of the Lord that is in Jerusalem. And all who were about them aided them with vessels of silver, with gold, with goods, with beasts, and with costly wares, besides all that was freely offered.
Moreover, King Cyrus brought out the articles belonging to the temple of the Lord, which Nebuchadnezzar had carried away from Jerusalem and had placed in the temple of his God. Cyrus, king of Persia, had them brought by Mithridath, the treasurer, who counted them out to Sheshbazzar, the prince of Judah.
That is the number of them. 30 gold platters, 1,000 silver platters, 29 knives, 30 gold basins, 410 silver basins, and similar kind, and 1,000 other articles. All the articles of gold and silvers were 5,400. All of these Sheshbazzar took to the captives who were brought out of Babylon to Jerusalem. So we're starting the book of Ezra, and I'm just going to start out by saying, what do we know about Ezra, the book of Ezra? Has anybody done I've never done a study through Ezra. I think most of my experience with Ezra myself has been referencing Ezra, more or less actually using through that Ezra.
I feel like I don't.
Well, just kind of looking through and looking at my commentary, I think, Ezra is a book that talks about a lot about the struggle to rebuild the temple, restore the temple after it was destroyed and after the 70 years of exile. It goes to show that, God fulfills his promises to his people after the 70 years of exile, and how he protected them at this time, even while they were in exile, and helps them to perform this rebuilding of the temple. And then we will come to meet kind of the protagonist in a sense, Ezra, who is a teacher, and he's going to work heavily with the Jewish nation, trying to kind of reinstate the law and kind of redirect them after they've spent this time in exile where they have kind of fallen away, and just kind of redirecting and rebuilding. So starting out in the first three verses. We have, in the first year, Cyrus, king of Persia, that the word of the Lord by the mouth of Jeremiah might be fulfilled. The Lord stirred up the spirit of Cyrus, king of Persia, so that he made a proclamation throughout all the kingdom, and also put it into writing. Thus saying, Cyrus, king of Persia, the Lord, the God of heaven, has given me all the kingdoms of earth, and he has charged me to build a house at Jerusalem, which is in Judah. Whoever is among you, all of his people, may his God be with him, and let him go to Jerusalem, which is in Judah, and rebuild the house of the Lord, the God of Israel. He is the God who is in Jerusalem. So, a little background. So Cyrus is kind of new to his, not necessarily his kingship. He was a ruler before Ezra, but this is his first year as the ruler after he defeated Babylon, who ruled over the Jewish people before this. And so this is his first year. In his first year, he makes this proclamation, which is verses 2 and 3. And Hannah, can you read 2 Chronicles 36, 22 to 23? This is kind of a direct, the exact same thing that was said, but with,
What was it?
2 Chronicles 36, 22 to 23.
Now the first year of Cyrus, king of Persia, that the word of God might be the mouth of Jerusalem might be fulfilled, the Lord stirred up the spirit of Cyrus, king of Persia, so that he made a proclamation through all his kingdom, and also put in his writing, thus says Cyrus, king of Persia, the Lord of God of heaven has given me all the kingdoms of the earth, and has charged me to build him a house at Jerusalem, which is Judea. Whoever is among all of you people, may the Lord his God be with him. Let him go up.
So, as we'll see, Cyrus is kind of the catalyst to this, the beginning of this whole reinvigoration of the building of the temple. He's as we'll read, he's the one who kind of finances the project in a sense, or more as he's more returning what was stolen. Brandon, can you read Isaiah 44:28? Yeah.
I say of Cyrus, he is my shepherd, and I will do all that I want him to do. He will say to Jerusalem, you will be built again. He will tell the temple, your foundations will be rebuilt.
So, this was a verse that was pointed out in my commentary I was reading, and, as I was kind of reading this, kind of, new to Ezra, I thought originally that, the way Cyrus was referring to God, referring to Israel, but then also in this passage here that, like, Cyrus must be, he must believe in God, he must follow God, and when in reality he wasn't. He was he followed his pagan gods, but it was, he claims that it's because of God in heaven that he was doing these things. It's in his decree that's what he says. We can kind of see that God uses, Cyrus's position to perform these actions. He weighs on his heart. It says in what verse is it? That in verse 1, the Lord stirred up the spirit of Cyrus, king of Persia, which is, kind of, just goes to show how, powerful God is, that these great rulers of man, God has power over them in these moments. And then we also see that, the fulfillment of prophecy. Dustin, if you want to read Jeremiah 25:12.
Yeah.
Cyrus claims that he's being charged with this rebuilding of the temple after the years of exile. He was aware that this was something that was foretold to happen.
So 25:12, you said? Okay. Then after 70 years are completed, I will punish the king of Babylon and that nation, the land of the Chaldeans, for their iniquity, declares the Lord, making the land an everlasting waste.
And we see that the way that God performs this is by setting Cyrus over the Babylonians. He took over the kingdom using Cyrus and then used Cyrus as a ruler to free the slaves of the Babylonians. But Cyrus in general, just kind of looking at in history, he led in a fashion that he allowed not only the Jewish people, but all people to have their gods. Whereas the Assyrians, Elamites, and the Hittites who ruled before the Babylonians, they all tried to, like, in a sense, assimilate all the slaves and people that they conquered into their religion. Cyrus kind of had a different view of that, where he allowed people to follow the gods they want. But I still find it, it's so interesting that he claims in his proclamation of the kingdom, it's the God of heaven, the God of the Jews, that he's given the power to, that he's claiming, that's where they're going to, he gives them the land in that moment, so. Any thoughts on the first 3 verses on, Cyrus, on this, this proclamation he makes?
So, I mean, you already mentioned the point of like, we shouldn't, take from this to say that he was necessarily, converted to being a Christian, but, he still, like, had an understanding that what he was doing was still from this God, right? So he acknowledged that the God of the Jews, and he uses like the capital Lord, so he uses Yahweh, like his divine name, like to refer to him, so he knows what he's talking about. But I mean, to him, because later on, at the end of verse 3, he says he is the God who is in Jerusalem. So he kind of says the God of heaven, but then also he's like, yeah, but he also, he's a God that's in heaven, but he's also, that's him. He's the God in Jerusalem. And sort of, I think that there's with the next, probably, he reiterates that idea in verse 4, I think, when we talk about it, and so we can kind of take that as an understanding that, like, he recognized the power of this God, but didn't think, oh, he's the one God necessarily, to follow and this and that.
Right.
Well, I think this could be, it's just a theory. We don't know, like, if he actually said like Yahweh, like that could just be like what's recorded, so that we'll know, like, this is the God that he's talking to. That might not have been like the exact word that he said.
Yeah.
Like a more general God.
Yeah, he might have just said the God in Jerusalem. But that we are talking about God here, so that could just be what's in the.
I still think by him saying Jerusalem, it kind of gives it, like, points towards, the Jewish God in a sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I guess that could be true. I feel like some verse, I at least in my mind, I think for something like this where he's making this proclamation, like, I think that this would just be something that they probably would have, like, I mean, they would have taken down directly. So like, I still think it's pretty likely
Would it
that
have
he
even
could
been in
use.
Hebrew?
Huh?
Would it have even been in Hebrew?
I mean, maybe his original proclamation wouldn't have been, but I mean, because I don't think, I'm not sure if they spoke in version at the time. Yeah. Well, yeah.
Well, probably, maybe not, actually, I don't know.
Yeah, it's hard to tell, but
So people could understand. Yeah, I'm saying they might not have had like that word for like Yahweh.
that's fair, yeah.
But the point still stands
Yeah.
regardless of whatever.
I mean, yeah, Eli said well, that it's still clear, like, he knows, like, this God that he's talking about, like, not in the way, not really having that.
And we get in it further, later verses it talks him placing, I forget what the basin of, the Lord, the Jewish, in his own hall, but it also mentions it's where he keeps all his other, statues or, stuff for all of the other gods he follows. So he definitely, either way, I think he kind of has a more liberal standing on, following faith within the kingdom kind of a thing. He probably saw how it failed with, beyond, the fact that, God softened his heart, but he probably also recognized the failures, the reasons the Babylonians and everybody else failed was because they had such a tight grip on their subjects.
Yeah,
By the way, I looked it up, they spelled old Persian.
old,
So-
yeah, I mean, that's kind of how, I mean,
Which makes perfect sense.
I mean, modern Hebrew definitely isn't the same as older Hebrew, and modern Greek definitely isn't the same as the Greek that is like Jesus and disciples and the people in the first century would have
Mhm.
spoken, so. That makes sense, I guess it's just an older version of Persian, yeah.
Could you tell me the reference in Jeremiah again, so I can write it in here?
Jeremiah 25:12.
I also just think I think there's a bit of, God's just sovereignty and grace that's communicated here in terms of like, maybe we read the prophecy of him. I mean, he's using Cyrus, and we already just discussed that Cyrus is probably not a converted Christian himself, but God is still using this ruler, right, to carry out his.
And he's
plans.
well aware of the prophecy, like you mentioned, it's like so that the prophecy is fulfilled.
Well, at least whoever's writing it, whoever wrote that part of it is, I don't know if Cyrus knew. We were talking, Caleb had mentioned that yesterday. It's like, we're not exactly sure how he, if someone had like shown him these prophecies, or if this was, and that's sort of what came to it, or if it was just an thing that like,
Okay, I see, yeah.
but I mean, it doesn't matter that much, but
Wait, so you're saying,
You're saying that Cyrus was aware of the prophecy?
or are you saying Ezra was aware of the prophecy?
we're saying, when it says Cyrus is, the Lord had stirred up the spirit of Cyrus, right? It's, I mean, it was just an interesting question of like, no, obviously, the person who wrote this was aware of the prophecy. I'm saying we don't know if Cyrus, it's just an interesting question of whether Cyrus had become aware of this somehow, or if he did this completely, and which I'm inclined to think it really had no involvement at all, but.
I think that makes more sense. I was a little confused on that last minute. I think
Yeah, really, it doesn't, I mean, how it came to pass doesn't really matter.
verse 4. And let each survivor in whatever place he sojourns be assisted by the men of his place with silver and gold, with goods, with beasts, besides free will offerings with the house of the Lord. So, survivor, in this text, refers to the Jews who are returning home to Jerusalem. And that these people who are deciding to make this homage kind of back to the land, to restore it, they will receive money and goods to fund that, because it's not going to be an easy task. It's going to be very expensive, massive construction, especially at this time, would be dangerous, taking years. But at the same time, now many of the Jews probably wanted to return. They've been living in Babylon for 70 years. Some of these Jews may have made, a better place for themselves at this time. And so they may, they've grown accustomed to their life in exile, and, probably didn't want to. You probably have people fall on all sorts of, the spectrum here. It's not like all the Jews were real zealous to return and rebuild the kingdom. But yeah, so that's verse 4. Any other thoughts on verse 4? So moving on to verses 5 and 6. Then rose up the heads of the fathers, house of Judah and Benjamin, and the priests and the Levites, everyone whose spirit God had stirred to go up to rebuild the house of the Lord that is in Jerusalem. And all who were about them aided them with vessels of silver, with gold, with goods, with feast, and with costly wares, besides all that was freely offered. So we see that the Lord not only stirred up the heart of Cyrus, but he also is stirring up the hearts of the Jewish people. That there was kind of, not only did he need to revive the hearts of a pagan king, but he also needed to revive the hearts of his Jewish people. But a lot of these people, they maintained their faith, and this was more of an exciting thing that they were returning home, that they maintained faith, and that's why the 70 years was ending, this exile was ending. So why do you think these people held on to God and trusted in him even after the destruction of their land? And maybe on the flip side, on a more human side, why do you think some people would have lost faith in this moment?
I mean, they've already been in exile for 70 years. And if they aren't aware of the word of the Lord from Jeremiah and the other prophets about, it only is supposed to last for 70 years, they might just think like, okay, well, now Cyrus is the ruler and he's not gonna be, he's not gonna be any better than Nebuchadnezzar, so we're just gonna be stuck here.
Right.
So why should I have any faith in
Oh,
back to Jerusalem?
Yeah, 70 years, like, everybody, that's their entire life. They haven't even been to Jerusalem or anything like that, so. Yeah, it's a long time. So it can be like, oh yeah, that's a story that my parents had, but it's not happening.
A hard thing to put faith in.
Yeah, it's one thing if you're there and you get exiled, you still probably have hope that like you'll go back there, but you've never been there. Why would I even care?
Jason, do you want to read Lamentations 3:22-24?
Verse again.
Lamentations 3:22-24.
All right. Well, underlined. Nice. Because of the Lord's great love, we are not consumed, for his compassions never fail. They are new every morning. Great is your faithfulness. I say to myself, Lord, the Lord is my portion. Therefore, I will wait for him.
I think, a lot of people, there could have been that despair of we had all this and we lost it. But if you think kind of like what Jason was saying, we have a new generation here also, they who grew up under Babylonian rule, this harsh rule, but now, you have Cyrus who's funding this or allowing this to happen, this rebuilding of the kingdom. And so for those who, probably, who maintain their faith at this time, especially those who are younger, this would have been a exciting experience to rebuild, go back to the homeland in a sense. I think there's definitely two sides to that coin. Hence why some people remain, some people went. Any other thoughts in verses 5 and 6?
I think I'll just add on that, like, I think there may also just be a component of like, there were certain people who, at the time felt like they were stirred up to go and help to rebuild the house of the Lord and go there, because we do find that there's like, we'll read later on in Ezra, there's like a couple of movements of people, like Ezra himself doesn't even come until like a later group of people go there. Like this first group is one, and we'll read all about the descendants who went there in the second chapter 2 next week. But and then so some people may have just like, we're not going to go right now, because you don't want to take. Maybe the idea is like, we're not going to take our entire nation and go somewhere where we need to do a lot of rebuilding first. So I mean, there's definitely, I definitely believe there's for sure, because I think I don't know, I mean, this whole moment, I mean, a lot of the Jews came back and a lot of people came back, but there's also people that went to other places, you know, and, I mean, especially when you're thinking about all the northern tribes, of Israel that, we don't really have our whole retelling of if,
What
you know, they
exactly
returned to their land, you know, what they did, so, yeah, I don't know, just a
Mhm.
couple thoughts in there.
So. Verse 7, Cyrus the king also brought out the vessels of the house of the Lord that Nebuchadnezzar had carried away from Jerusalem, and placed them in the house of his gods. Hannah, do you want to read, 1 Samuel 5:2? And then Miranda, do you want to get ready to read Jeremiah 52:17? Samuel 5:2 and Jeremiah 52:17.
Five what?
5:2.
Five two. Then the Philistines took the ark of the God and brought it to the house of the Dagon and set it up besides Dagon. Dagon?
Dagon.
Daggone.
Dagon.
Yeah, something like that.
And then Miranda.
Alright, Jeremiah 52:17. The Babylonians broke into pieces the bronze pillars, the bronze stands, and the large bronze bowl called the sea, which were in the temple of the Lord. Then they carried all the bronze pieces to Babylon.
So, the Jeremiah verse is kind of a retelling of like this exact instance, and the first Samuel, just trying to give like an idea of like what happens when these things, you know, were taken, because I mean, if you think about like the Philistines taking the Ark of the Covenant, that's a, you know, a great victory. They just, you know, on the surface, looking at it like kind of from a human perspective, they've gotten the other people's, you know, culmination of their religion, this huge artifact, and they've claimed it, and it kind of goes into show, you know, these previous rulers, they, you know, they went in, they destroyed, and they took everything in. And then, you know, Cyrus, you know, giving things back, but also, I think, you know, like we talked about earlier, we see how the gods kind of weighs heavy on Cyrus. That, you know, Cyrus, you know, he keeps one of these vessels and places it in his house of God. And we don't know Cyrus's heart or anything, but still, when compared to the previous rulers and other things, you know, he's placing this vessel in his home. And so I guess the question would be, why do you think Cyrus placed this vessel in his house of gods? Is there significance to that? Is this just him trying to play a political move, or is this
What verse is that specifically?
verse 7?
Is it saying that Cyrus placed them in the temple, or that Nebuchadnezzar had placed them there, and Cyrus is reading it out? Because when I read it as like Nebuchadnezzar put all the articles in there, and Cyrus is taking them out.
I think you're right.
That would make more sense.
That does make more sense. Okay, I was clearly confused entirely.
What was your answer for that question?
I just kind of said that it was kind of maybe a political move to kind of show the likability of that, and that further that, you know, just kind of going, I just kind of will check it back to the first verse, wherever that was. That is a mind add. Thank God there's no other new people here.
Yeah,
We are recording that.
they'll just watch it online.
We can delete this.
We'll edit it out.
You know this thing, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So I guess in turn, we can kind of see how Cyrus, he's restoring, well, God is restoring, you know, the Jewish peoples, their wealth, and their, you know, their religious artifacts to Nebuchadnezzar, giving these to him. And then also how, you know, he's kind of making up for what was taken by the previous rulers, so. Any thoughts on verse 7, different than what Eli had?
I just think it's crazy that he even like gave that stuff back, because it's all super valuable.
But they're also all like dishes and stuff.
But I mean, even though.
Gold
now-
and
They're valuable, but you think they, like, after 70 years, they mix in with all the other
I mean,
stuff,
Yeah.
I would think, I don't know how much they value.
they're pretty specific on what was given back.
Yeah, I mean, unless the Lord had, I mean, providentially had, I mean, kept these things, you know, in a place that you could find them.
Yeah.
Easily, yeah.
It's just kind of, I don't know, like, are you just like, was he just like so wealthy that he was just like, I don't need these, you guys can take them, and I want my name, I want you guys to like me, so.
I mean, it's
just,
like king,
That
king
is
of
very
Persia. So,
I just think that, I mean, that's just. I mean, God had stirred Cyrus's heart, you know, I mean, had caused him to do a lot of these things, so I mean. To let the people go back and to give all this back to them, like, you know, maybe that wasn't actually a decision that he would have made, but, with the Lord's hand, like, upon him, like, that's what happened. And the Lord had, I mean, it said that this would take place in that time, like, when they would return, you know, to rebuild the temple and, to bring all of these things back, I think.
I wonder if Cyrus did that for any other like major religious groups, like if it's like recorded in history anywhere that like Cyrus like also returned religious stuff to other people.
I don't know about the returning stuff, but it was that the other, you know, countries and nations that were conquered by it, and that he kind of took over, he, you know, allowed them to kind of, because they said it's very similar to kind of like what the Romans did, where there was kind of like this giant cast of gods that, you know, anyone could really kind of follow, that's kind of what it leads into eventually, but.
Definitely God's providence though.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, yeah, the big element still is just the fact that like this happened precisely in the 70 years that, you know, God told like the big in captivity for this long, you know, so.
So, verse 8, Cyrus, king of Persia, brought these out in the charge of Mithridates, the treasurer, who counted them out to Shebasar, the prince of Judah. So, just a little, I guess, called name facts. Mithridates is the name that it means given by Mithra, which Mithra was a Persian god. And then, Shebasar was a Jewish official, but he had a Babylonian name. So I think this kind of goes to show that, you know, the Jewish people were ingrained in the Babylonian culture, so much so that, you know, they were being given Babylonian names. But his name meant Prince of Judah, Sheshbazzar. So, and he was you know, one of the leaders of the exiled Jewish community that was in charge of building the temple, and we'll talk about him a lot more. Ezra 5:14 refers to him as a governor. Towards the end of that, I'll read it. And the gold and silver vessels of the house of God, which Nebuchadnezzar had taken out of the temple that was given in Jerusalem, brought out into the temple of Babylon. These things Cyrus the king took out of the temple of Babylon, and they were delivered to one whose name was Shebazar, who had been made governor. So here we actually see, you know, the extra transaction of these things and giving them to Sheshbazzar, who is kind of the Jewish official managing this at this time. And then as we get into verses 9 and 10, 9, 10, and 11, this last section, we have just them kind of numbering out, and giving out exactly what was given. And this kind of shows again, God is using, Cyrus to fund this, journey. He not only did he free his people, but he's giving them all the tools to rebuild the temple.
Yeah.
And not only he's restoring these, these artifacts, these things that were, part of the Jewish, culture that was used in their riches, but also used in their ceremonies. Something I was a little confused on when I was reading this is that, so it gives all these numbers of things. And then it says that it all adds up to 5,400, but if you add up all those vessels, it only gets you 2,499 items. So what is that?
Did you want them to list
I wanted them to list
2,000 more
everything.
lines?
Well, I mean, I figured if they were that specific on those things, it would all add up to 5,400. But in my research, which there wasn't very many, I guess I'm the only guy who asked this question. They said that, well, what I found online was just that, those were smaller, more singular items that they really, like a golden spoon or this and that didn't really
Yeah, maybe they like,
culminate to anything.
we're listing out the bigger, like the
The
bigger
more-
things and then, like the total item, this is the total amount we had together, but these were
Mhm.
like the bigger objects that they were able to take back.
Right.
So I have a question for you in relation to this. When you read verse 9, you said 29 knives.
29 censers. Did I say 29 knives?
You did.
Wait, instead of,
Censers?
so it's gold dishes, silver pans.
What does the sense mean?
Which one was knives? The first one?
No, so there's 30 basins of gold, 1,000 basins of silver, and then some translations say 29 knives. I know this because we were talking about this yesterday, and there's had knives in it.
Did I say knives?
You said knives, and I think that might have been, well, I don't know.
So there's a footnote that says the meaning of the Hebrew for this word is uncertain.
Okay, that's what we were thinking, but I was just curious if you had.
I
They
think,
got 29 something.
my commentary said something, they just said that like the Philistines. Like they tracked everything that they had very well.
Okay.
But they don't. Like number wise, they knew like from the, like, for certain there's 30 of something, that's where they don't know,
Yeah, the exact, and that's fine, I was just curious. I mean,
Which, again, like Jason said, I'm surprised they don't just have a pile of gold and not just like, hey, those are Jerusalem's plates over there.
They kept
Don't
them
touch
separate.
those.
They don't want
Yeah.
to mix them.
Right.
For
Yeah.
for 70 years.
Maybe they have a little museum.
Just a bunch of sad Jewish
Yeah.
exiles.
I mean, it could be, I mean, yeah, there might have been some of it that's sort of way, but I mean, I think, I mean, as we saw with, if reading on the passage about Dagon, them digging in the ark, that they didn't just like kind of throw it somewhere, but they sat in like a special place, so they were still like, oh, we're gonna take these special objects and we're gonna place them in these places in our, temples and this and that, so, I mean, some of the stuff might have just been,
But these are like
somewhere.
1,000 silver dishes.
I mean, that's, yeah,
Like,
well, they probably had some and they were like, okay, these are all the rest of the, here's where all the rest of them went to, or so, I don't know. I'm not gonna tell you exactly how they
Take
counted
some
out.
from this nation and throw it on top, they won't notice.
Yeah.
they're like the British, they just put it all in a museum.
Yeah.
These are all the places we visited and stolen stuff from.
But yeah, it was just interesting, because I feel like, I mean, censers, I feel like the censer is the thing that they would use, like, with lighting the incense and stuff like that. would be
Oh,
the-
that's what that is.
I'm pretty sure, I was just like 29 knives, like, I mean, it's. But again, it's, your footnote says they're uncertain of the word, and that's probably just
Yeah,
what
a
happened.
vessel used for
It-
burning incense.
There's not enough of a good surrounding context to be able to give a clue as to what
It
exactly
could be
that word
literally
is.
anything.
Yeah, it can
It's
be.
kind of funny that they're like, it's either a knife or this thing that produces light. We don't know.
Or a sensor or something like that.
We're not sure, but it's
We know it's
definitely
not-
one of these
We know
two
it's not a
things.
dish, and we know it's not a bowl. But other than that,
It's either hot or pointy.
Well, I mean, didn't they have, some context clues from like Deuteronomy, like how they, or, yeah, Deuteronomy, or where they like listed all the things going in the temple?
They made the temple in that point in Deuteronomy,
Or whatever.
you're talking
it
about,
is.
you're talking about in Kings, like where
Yeah.
Solomon builds the temple and
Yeah,
stuff.
when they, like, they list out everything they made.
I mean, maybe, that might be why they at least have a gas, but
Mhm.
it's still, you know. That's fair.
like, we spent a long time on that.
Yeah,
That's
we
fine,
did.
we still got, wait, we're good, we still have technically 15 minutes for the
It's
study
okay, I
time,
have
so.
3 more minutes of stuff, so.
Okay, that's great. I still have some questions, but I'll wait until the end, so.
So, and just kind of a wrap up, chapter 1, we see here, we start at this, chapter 1, and it's, Cyrus. Through the hand of God, he's releasing the people, and not only that, the Jewish people, but he's also, he funds this expedition, this rebuilding of the temple. And, we see, smaller things, aside from like just the story of rebuilding the temple, we see heavily how God has an influence over politics in our life, politics are scary, as we all know, especially as of recently. And so it's good to see that God has where, you watch the news, you're kind of like, man, God, please do something. But like, here we see like, God plays a role in politics, these giant things that, seem to be, hard to control or hard to understand. So it's great to take faith that he understands this stuff or has a role in it. But yeah, so, I guess final question, what is the purpose of rebuilding the temple? Why is this even? Why, if they didn't work the first time, why are we doing the second time?
It's
I don't know.
the holy place, the temple.
I think this is. The Jewish people, I think these 70 years, they've kind of, they've kind of acclimated to this Babylonian rule, to this rule of Cyrus, of Persia, they're kind of losing their, what made them special, which is God, So, rebuilding this temple will allow, for teachings to pursue. And then the Jewish people can, build their identity being God, allowing for more, more lives to be turned. And these younger exiles that, were never exposed to this, these great, these teachings and, the temple and these ceremonies. And to the old exiles that have forgotten these things, it's a rejuvenation, they've spent, time in captivity due to their sin, now it's time for them to, in a sense, step into the light again, to start pursuing God again.
I'd say it's also just like another piece in the, continuous cycle of the Jewish people, turning away from God, and then God, exile, and then eventually just bringing them back in, and we see that like continuously throughout the Old Testament. And that points towards like the greater redemption, which eventually comes, with Jesus, right? It's that same kind of pattern. We're not there yet.
We'll get there.
I erase all memories for books in the future.
Yeah.
Sort of new study.
What is the chief end of man?
Glorify God, enjoy him forever.
To glorify God and enjoy him forever, right? I mean, their chief purpose when they, are built like of the nation of Israel, was to glorify this God and to enjoy him, right? So when they get there, the first thing that they should be doing is like building this temple to be able to honor him and praise him. Right now in time, of course, with the Jesus guy, which you're not, still some of you guys aren't sure who exactly he is, but he comes in and, you know, says we don't need that physical temple anymore. Because you're all temples of the Holy Spirit, right? And time to come, but that was still at that time, what they looked to, and that was their, you know, we are gonna worship God in this way, and that's what we're called to do, so.
I mean, it'd be like, you know, if we all got taken somewhere new and then they like destroyed all the churches or something and like we didn't have any place to worship God that we were used to.
We're still better off because we have Jesus.
I mean, yes,
in our
yes,
hearts.
for sure. But I mean, like, you know, it's their place of worship was just completely destroyed, and where God like came and visited them, like it just was completely, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, at least we can, you know, we can say, oh, we can meet in a house, but, you know, if you, especially for a large congregation of people like that are praising God together, I mean, it's nice to have a building to be able to do that in, so, yeah, we would be like, let's find a place where we can all meet.
Yeah, it's true, Jesus tabernacles in the house, so we don't actually meet in a physical tabernacle.
Tabernacles and things.
Yeah, there's like, I can't remember where it is, but it's like that.
I'm pretty sure that's in Hebrew somewhere. If he like, I mean, he like dwelt among us, and so he's like, I mean,
Like the
Jesus.
literal translations of the tabernacles.
Yeah.
Or something like that. I'm pretty sure it's in there.
All the shadows and types of the Old Testament are being brought forth in
I
Jesus.
said that so quietly, people heard it.
I was thinking it.
Thinking what? Oh my gosh.
I literally heard it when I turned, I'm like, I'm sorry, you said what?
That's all I have,
Yeah, I have questions.
Yeah.
So, well, actually, no, hold on. First thing, it was,
rebuttals.
no. This isn't a rebuttal. It's just, I just want to hear kind of if you had seen some other things. So you had mentioned that the Sheshbazzar name was like, oh, this is a Babylonian name given. And I was like, oh yeah, that makes, because, I mean, we see in the book of Daniel where they were given, the new, like he's given the name, Belteshazzar, and then we know Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, like, but those aren't their Hebrew names, those are their Babylonian names that they're given to them. With that though, do you think that Sheshbazzar might actually be the same person as Zerubbabel that's mentioned in the next chapter?
As,
I guess we'll find out.
We'll find out.
Next week.
my commentary mentioned something.
Did they?
I think it. But they don't know, like, it may be this.
Yeah, I mean, it's not
Like,
100%, but I was curious. I was curious if what you looked at had mentioned.
I think it definitely could have been, like, especially with this being like. I think, you know, this chapter 1 is like, it seems like if it was all done in like maybe a week, but this is something that's, you know, like we said, it's gonna take years to happen.
Oh, yeah, I mean,
So,
the book of Ezra does
Especially
actually take place
if
for a
like,
long.
if he's like, you know, becomes governor in Jerusalem kind of thing, I can see him kind of, you know. Maybe not like remaking himself, but kind of being like, hey. Let's use Jewish names, kind of a thing, you know.
Can we update Jewish names?
Here.
I don't know.
No, let's not.
Yeah, we'll just start referring to each other by our, no.
Let's think though you're a real member of the, this changed.
Gates Bazaar.
No, that's a Babylonian name.
I'm still going to Gates Bazaar.
Yeah, the only, this isn't a question, but I just wanted to mention it because it's just something, you know, because it mentions that the heads of the fathers, house of Judah, Benjamin, and then some of like the Levites were the ones that came back, and yeah, in verse 5, and that's just and the reason why it says tribes in particular is because it was Judah that was exiled to Babylon. It wasn't, all of Israel wasn't exiled there. I mean, there might be some sojourners from the northern tribe that ended up there, but it wasn't. It was primarily those nations that were there, which is why, oh, what about all the other tribes? It's like, well, they were all part of the northern kingdom, and a lot of them had been exiled to a different place.
Were the Levites?
The Levites didn't have an inheritance
Right,
of their own. They lived among like all the
Right.
tribes, so there were just some, yeah, what's yours?
So when you're talking about the Mormon tribes and we don't know what they want or whatever, is that where the Mormons get their thing about like
Yeah.
some of the tribes might have gone to North America or
Yes.
South America
Yeah.
or whatever?
The Northern Kingdom.
Yes.
Oh, I
Yes.
see where they're going.
Yeah.
Makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, so when they, yeah, so when they're talking about like, oh, this, we're descended from this tribe and this tribe, they're saying. When that, they all got distributed and after being exiled and everything, that they went to these different places. I think there's a group that, like, we'll say some country in Europe is descended from Dan, like. The tribe of Dan, I'm not exactly sure, I can't recall exactly what. For who, but yeah, there's a lot of theories in that regard, so, Jason, your hand was up, but
I was gonna say that Marina had a question.
Oh, okay,
So,
I appreciate that, so, sorry, I just wanted, there were just some things I was thinking about that are interesting to mention.
I don't have solid answers.
Oh, well, the second one was good,
I have failed you.
wow,
I will turn in my resume.
no, I mean, you had a solid answer for the one question I had, so it's all we need, so. About Zerubbabel, that we'll talk about next week, along with many other great names.
Are we talking about Zakai?
Hmm?
Are we gonna talk about Zakai?
Yeah, and Darkon, yeah.
And
There's a
Bethel?
lot of names here. You can just like close your eyes and pick a name for your
Yeah,
child.
we're gonna have you read it next time.
Yeah,
Oh, gosh.
Okay,
that'll be the whole stuff.
that's all I got now.
okay, great. Well, I'll go ahead and stop the recording here, but bye-bye, not you, Enoch, you can stay on, but. Bye.